Australia's $500 billion secret. The industry America desperately needs. While America's housing market collapsed under its own weight, one country quietly built a $500 billion industry that's now reshaping global migration. And the U.S. is scrambling to copy it. Walk through Melbourne on any Tuesday morning. You'll see something extraordinary. 1 in 4 people under 30 is an Australian. They're international students. And they're not just studying, they're auditioning for citizenship. Australia's international education sector generated $40.3 billion in 2023 alone. That's according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics. To put that in perspective, it's bigger than wheat, bigger than beef, bigger than wine. It's Australia's 4th largest export. But here's what makes this number terrifying or brilliant, depending on where you stand. This isn't just about education. But wait, before we begin, please subscribe to ensure that you never miss out on any of my essential stuff. Comment, "I subscribe" below, and I will personally welcome you to our community. With that said, let's get started. Between 2016 and 2021, something shocking happened. U.S. international student enrollment dropped 15%. Same 5 years. Australia's grew by 23%. Let me tell you about Priya Sharma. She's 24. Computer science graduate from Mumbai. Smart enough to get into both UCLA and the University of Sydney in 2019. She chose Sydney, not because of rankings, not because of campus beauty, because of a visa. In America, she'd get 1 year of work authorization after graduation, 1 year to find a job, prove her worth, and hope an employer would sponsor her H-1B visa, which has a rejection rate of 24%. In Australia, 2 to 4 years of guaranteed work rights. Then a clear pathway to permanent residency. Priya is now at Atlassian. She earned her permanent residency in 2023. She didn't just want an education. She wanted a future. And America let her walk away. But this isn't just about visas. There's something deeper happening. Those international students contribute $8 billion annually to Australian housing, $5 billion to retail, $3.5 billion to hospitality. These numbers come from Deloitte Access Economics 2023 report. These students support 250,000 Australian jobs. That's more than the entire coal mining industry. I spoke with David Chun, former international student recruiter at a Sydney university, 7 years in a role, specialized in the Chinese market. He told me something that made me pause. In 2018, I ran internal analytics. 73% of the students I recruited intended to stay in Australia permanently. They weren't hiding it. We knew, the university knew, the government knew. Then he said something that sounds cold, but might be genius. We weren't selling degrees. We were selling Australian citizenship with a study requirement. Here's how it works. Pay attention, because this is where it gets interesting. Step 1, student visa. Relatively easy to get if you have the money and basic qualifications. Step 2, graduate with an Australian degree, 2 to 4 years. Step 3, post-study work visa. Another 2 to 4 years depending on your degree level. Step 4, apply for skill migration visa. Points-based system. Here's the kicker. An Australian degree gives you an extra 15 points. Australian work experience? More points. Step 5, permanent residency, then citizenship. The data is stunning. According to the Australian Bureau of Statistics 2021 census, 16.4% of Australia's current population was born overseas and arrived first on a student visa. Compare that to America. The H-1B visa has an $85,000 annual cap. No direct path to a green card. You're in limbo, sometimes for decades. Australia issues more permanent residency visas per capita than any developed nation on Earth, 3 times higher than Canada, 5 times higher than the United States. This isn't accidental. This is architecture. So why did Australia build a system when America built walls? Here's the uncomfortable answer. Desperation masked as strategy. Australia's fertility rate sits at 1.63 children per woman. That's from the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, 2023. The replacement level, the rate needed to maintain population, is 2.1. Do the math. Without immigration, Australia's population would start declining by 2040. But here's where it gets brilliant. Instead of just opening the floodgates, they created a trial period. International students come in. They learn English. They integrate culturally. They gain Australian qualifications. They prove their economic value. Then, and only then, do they get to stay. Emma Rodriguez knows this better than anyone. She's an immigration policy advisor in Canberra. She came from Chile as a student in 2008. Now she helps design the visa policies that brought her here. She told me about a 2022 meeting where the immigration minister said something that never made it into public policy documents. We're not recruiting students. We're auditioning Australians. That line, she said, became the unofficial North Star of Australian immigration policy. Select the skilled, the integrated, the economically productive. It sounds cold, but is it genius? Because while Australia planned for 2050, America is facing a crisis it didn't see coming. The U.S. birth rate just hit 1.64 children per woman, lowest since records began. That's CDC data from 2023. Social Security is projected to run out of money by 2034 unless something dramatic changes. 73 million baby boomers are retiring. Only 61 million Gen Z workers are entering the workforce to replace them. Here's the irony that should make you angry. America has the universities. MIT, Stanford, Harvard, Princeton. America has the tech companies. Google, Apple, Microsoft, Tesla. America has the opportunities. But after graduation, we tell the talent to leave. According to National Foundation for American Policy's 2023 study, 79% of international students in America would prefer to stay permanently if a clear pathway existed. Between 2010 and 2020, an estimated 500,000 U.S.-educated international students returned to their home countries. Not because they wanted to, because we forced them to. Some of them founded companies now worth over $50 billion. In China, in India, in South Korea. Not here. Australia didn't just avoid this mistake. They built an empire on it. But empires have costs. Melbourne and Sydney housing prices are up 187% since 2010. CoreLogic tracks this data religiously. International student housing demand accounts for 14% of the rental market in major university cities. Jake Morrison feels this every day. He's 28, Australian-born teacher in Sydney. He saved for 4 years to scrape together a house deposit. In 2023, he finally found a place he could afford, a modest apartment in the suburbs. He got outbid. The buyer? An investor purchasing the property specifically for student rentals. Higher returns. Less risk. International students pay rent up front, often for the full year. Jake now lives 90 minutes from his school. He told me he feels like a stranger in my own city. The system works economically, but at what social cost? 63% of Australians believe immigration levels are too high, according to the 2023 Scrambling Foundation survey. The prosperity is real, but so is the resentment. They built an economy, but did they sell belonging? And then there's the quality problem nobody wants to talk about. Some Australian universities have admitted students with IELTS scores of 5.5, that's barely conversational English, to meet revenue targets. When you're charging $30,000 to $50,000 per year in tuition, enrollment becomes survival. A 2019 ABC investigation uncovered something disturbing. Internal pressure on professors to pass international students regardless of academic performance. The data backs this up. International student fail rates hover between 3% and 8%. Domestic students, 12 to 18%. Despite the language barrier, Dr. Mia Kim knows this intimately. She's a former lecturer at the University of Melbourne, PhD in engineering, taught for 11 years. She loved her job until 2020. A department head pulled her aside after she failed 11 students in a core engineering course. 7 of them were international students. The department head said, "Mia, remember, Each failed student costs us $45,000 in future revenue. We need to think about sustainability. She resigned in 2022. Now she speaks publicly about what she calls education as migration theater. Real learning replaced by credential manufacturing. When profit meets immigration policy, does education survive? And this is where America's opportunity and danger begins. The Biden administration proposed expanded pathways in 2023. The startup visa for entrepreneurs. Extended STEM work authorization to 3 years. Small steps toward the Australian model. But there's resistance. 43% of Americans oppose easier paths, even for high-skilled immigrants, according to Pew Research 2024. Here's what gets lost in the politics. Economics. The American Enterprise Institute published a study in 2022. Every H-1B visa worker generates 1.83 additional American jobs through the economic multiplier effect. They don't take jobs. They create them. So America faces a choice. Option 1. Copy Australia's model. Accept some social tension and housing pressure in exchange for economic growth and demographic stability. Option 2. Maintain the current system. Preserve cultural homogeneity but face demographic collapse and social security insolvency. Option 3. Find a third way. Unknown territory. Uncharted waters. There's no easy answer. Only trade-offs. But here's what should terrify American policymakers. This isn't a two-player game anymore. Australia's model is being studied by the UK, Canada, and New Zealand. Everyone faces the same demographic crisis. Everyone's competing for the same global talent pool. And that talent pool is shifting. By 2040, according to Brookings Institution research from 2022, 72% of the world's middle class will be in Asia. For the first time in 200 years, talent doesn't need the West. The West needs talent. Let me tell you about Ahmad Hassan. He's a Malaysian engineer, 26 years old, just graduated in 2024. He got offers from Stanford and the University of Sydney. Stanford, better ranking, better brand name, Silicon Valley proximity. But then he asked himself, what happens after graduation? Stanford, he told me, gives me an amazing education and then forces me to figure out how to stay or leave. Sydney gives me a good education and then builds a life around it. America is where you visit. Australia is where you belong. He chose Sydney. When did the American dream become the Australian one? Here's what nobody wants to admit. Australia didn't get lucky. They made hard choices America refuses to make. They accepted trade-offs. Economic growth, but housing became less affordable. Demographic stability, but cultural anxiety increased. Global competitiveness, but local resentment grew. Is there a perfect system, or only a choice between different imperfect ones? And to be fair, some economists argue Australia's model is unsustainable, that it relies on perpetual growth, that it creates housing bubbles and masks underlying productivity problems. The data supports some of this. Australian productivity growth from 2010 to 2023 averaged 1.1% annually. The U.S., 1.4%. That's OECD data. They solved one problem, but created others. So here's what keeps me up at night. America built universities to educate the world. Australia built them to populate a continent. One vision looks backward. One looks forward. Your rent might be lower without international students competing for housing. Your economy might collapse without them funding it. Would you trade affordable housing for a thriving economy? Cultural comfort for demographic survival? These aren't abstract policy questions anymore. They're about what country your children inherit. Here's my question for you. If you could design America's immigration system from scratch, would you copy Australia's model or create something entirely different? And be honest with yourself about this part. Would your answer change if you were the international student trying to build a life? If you were Priya or Ahmad or Emma, drop your answer below. Tell me which country you think got it right. Because this isn't just policy debate. This is a competition reshaping the world order. And ready or not, America isn't winning.